silly is that?
Pulls up three-pointer. Bang! Bang! It's good! Wins the game at the buzzer.
Hello, welcome back to the Hoop Junkie Podcast, the #1 sports podcast in the world.
According to us.
I'm your host, Zach. I'm joined as always by the man himself, Chance Baker. Chance, how you doing today, brother?
Doing good. Happy Sunday. Ready to watch some more action this afternoon. It's picking up in NBA world, so I'm doing great. What about you, man?
Man, yesterday I didn't really do anything but sit around and watch. I smoked some wings. They were fire. And
That's not where I expected you to go with that. When you said I smoked some wings, and it was great. Yeah.
Yeah. We are a PG rated household around here, Chance. No, but man, I smoked some wings yesterday. They came out fire. Sat around the house, and all I did was just drink beer, and I drank a little wine yesterday, and then watched both of those games. And then I woke up this morning, and I'm like, doggone, I didn't really realize how much I drank yesterday. It's just one of those times when you just sit there and you just sitting there watching games, eating wings all day, and then you just sitting there drinking. I'm like, oh man, I put some beers down yesterday, man.
Yeah, that's what it is. You just wake up full of regret. You're like, what happened? I thought it was just a chill night in.
Yeah, man. I was just trying to save Anheuser-Busch from collapsing, man.
Hey, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to save them.
Well, look, Chance, man, as always, we get on here once a week, sometimes twice a week. We try. But we've got some news to cover. So Coach Mike Budenholzer was let go by the Milwaukee Bucks. I know we talked about that a little bit on the pod last week, Chance, but I don't think either one of us were just expecting it to be a decision that was this quick. And just because he won them a championship, was like the first time in like 50 years. They've had winning seasons every year with him. But they let him go. What was your first reaction when you heard the news?
Not super surprised. The timing is unfortunate just because obviously we got into this a little bit, but Bud had, a tragic last couple of weeks with, a death in the family, basically like right in the middle of the series. And, that could have affected some of his in-game decisions. I know like when you're dealing with something super personal, like it's hard to be in the right, state of mind, especially like as an NBA head coach where you have to make decisions extremely quickly. Like obviously that's going to throw you off, but ultimately, this was a decision that didn't come down to just this series. I think this is, collectively over the past few years, the Bucks have underperformed. Some of that could be because of injuries. Chris Middleton out last year. At the end of the day, he did win them a championship, and he brought the Bucks, the best success they've had in a long, long time. But I do think the reason for the timing now, I'll give you two words: Nick Nurse. He's available, and they want to make sure. I think he would be a great fit for them. Just kind of skipping ahead and looking ahead to what could be next for them. I think Nick Nurse is overall just a better coach. I think, with what he did in Toronto, I think he can take these guys to the next level. They have some offseason decisions to make. Chris Middleton coming up as a free agent. But I think ultimately, as unfortunate as it is, and you talked about this last week, like at the end of the day, business is business, and we get that. So the timing is unfortunate, but I think it works out for both parties. Bud gets a pretty big, buyout. He gets to chill, stress-free. I think that time would actually be really good for him personally and mentally. So I think it works out for him, and for the Bucks, they can go on for, someone like Nick Nurse who might be a better fit long-term for them. And it's just kind of funny looking back at the last few champions, Nick Nurse or the people that made the championship. Nick Nurse in Toronto, he's out. Frank Vogel won a championship in LA, he's out. Bud winning a championship in Milwaukee, he's out. And then you've just got Spoelstra and Pop just chilling like, yep, my job's safe for the next, as long as I want it. But yeah, Nick Nurse is definitely the guy I have my eye on for them. A couple other potential candidates, but those were my kind of immediate thoughts. Were you surprised at all when this came out?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised just by the timing aspect. I thought that they would at least wait to get closer to one of these finals rounds, the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals, to go ahead and do that, to at least take like a week off and sit down and think about it and all that stuff. But they were like, I guess when you know, right? But one coach chance I'm actually looking at is Frank Vogel.
Yeah, that's the other one
for them. Another experienced coach, also then known for his defense. And you looked at this roster specifically, this roster is built to defend. So I wouldn't be surprised if they take a look at him as well.
Another championship winner.
Yeah, another championship coach. I mean, like, they've got options, but the one thing is that when you fire a coach like Bud, like you know that you're kind of just rolling the dice at this point anyway. It's like making a head coach decision is a big deal in the NBA, period. And for you to go and say, all right, we're firing Bud, but then we might bring in Nick Nurse or Frank Vogel as a replacement. Are Nick Nurse and Frank Vogel better coaches than Bud? I don't know.
I think so. I think both of them probably. I think Frank Vogel was a very underrated coach. I think he was kind of a scapegoat. That Lakers roster was just a disaster down the stretch. Like, I don't think there's much he could have done with that.
Right.
Nurse, I think, has been, I think, one of the best coaches in the league for the past 5 or so years now as well. I think Bud does get a lot more hate than maybe he sometimes should, but at the end of the day, he does make a lot of questionable decisions. And I don't think Bud's like one of the worst 15 coaches in the league. Like, I think he's in probably the upper half. But when you're a team with Giannis on your team and you have championship aspirations every single year, top 50 percentile doesn't cut it. You need someone that's going to be locked in and ready to make the right decision. So I think either one of those would be upgrades over Bud. And part of that too is just like over time, sometimes it's just both parties need to move on, regardless, even if Bud was like a great coach, like at times, sometimes it's run its course. It's time to move on. And I think there's a situation where perhaps Bud would be a better coach in a different situation when he didn't have the pressure and all of this. And you see like in the post game where Giannis is saying that he wanted to guard Jimmy Butler more, but he's like, that wasn't my decision. And so like, it just seems like it's kind of ran its course in this case. And, it is better for both parties, but ultimately I do think Vogel or Nurse would be upgrades. Not to say that they'd be like significant upgrades, but I do think both of those would be, better than what they were getting with Bud. And I think ultimately Bud will end up, in another role. If I were him, I would take a year or two off and just, reset and, join another team when I'm ready. But curious to see what moves they go from here, because it's do or die time. When you've got Giannis, you need to be making moves to win now. And it was definitely a very disappointing into their season.
Man, I can't wait till we get in the offseason and start doing these deep dives on teams, and because man, the Bucks are going to be a interesting topic going into this offseason, because man, they've got a lot of pieces that they I mean, you got to make a decision on. And so, but they did the first thing. They made a decision on their head coach, and so at least now they can start that ball and start that process going. So. To all of our listeners out there, hey, I'm curious to know what you guys think. So be sure to comment below in the on what you feel about Bud, or hit us up on social media. I'm curious to hear you guys' opinion on the Bucks firing of him. Now, Chance, we pretty much got all the NBA awards wrapped up now, finally. And First off, I want to say that I was right about all the Kings.
It was well deserved, for sure.
I would have said it. I called all the Kings awards, but Chance, if you would go to give us a rundown of all the NBA awards so far, while we're at this point where we're waiting on the All NBA awards to come out.
Yep. So we'll start with basically the most important, work our way down. So we discussed this I think this broke like 5 minutes before we hopped on last week, but MVP ultimately went to Joel Embiid. I do think that was well deserved. Do you have any thoughts on these, or do you want to just run through each of them? Just run through. Cool. Defensive Player of the Year was none other than Memphis' own Jaren Jackson Jr. Rookie of the Year, one of the least surprising, Paolo Banchero. Sixth Man of the Year, I thought this one was one of the most tight races. Ended up going to Malcolm Brogdon from Boston. Most Improved Player, Lauri Markkanen from the Utah Jazz. Coach of the Year, Sacramento's finest, Mike Brown. And I believe that was the last main one. Marcus Smart also got the Hustle Player of the Year. To be honest, I forgot that was even a thing. I think you might be muted, Zach.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. That award snuck up on me.
Yeah, same here when they announced that. I was like, and apparently he's won it once before. Like, I don't know what I was doing, but I've never heard about a Hustle Player award, man. Like,
I've never heard that. I saw it like on the bottom ticker of NBA TV one day, like NBA Hustle Player Award goes to Marcus Smart. I was like, what?
Yeah, I will say also De'Aaron Fox got the first Clutch Player of the Year award, which I think that one was one of the most unanimous ones too. Like I just think his clutch numbers down the stretch were just ridiculous. Yeah, the Hustle Player of the Award, I did not realize that. That's kind of like the Sportsmanship Player of the Year that Mike Conley, I feel like, just won every year just because he's like the nicest person in the league. But like I was like, I didn't even realize like the Hustle Award was a thing, but I guess it makes sense.
All right, and then you didn't do Executive of the Year, Chance. You didn't do none of.
Hey, I'm just pulling from what ESPN had, but
we can do the Executive of the Year. What was it? There's another one you didn't do. Maybe that was maybe
yeah,
you get them all.
So to give your Kings some more credit, yeah, Monte McNair got the Executive of the Year. What were your thoughts on that one? Do you think that was the right move based on all the moves that they made? I think that's well deserved. That wasn't the pick I had. I think I mentioned that I think Utah's executive should have gotten it just because of all the value that he was able to get from the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell trades. I thought, Danny Ainge was a well-deserving. But when you look back at that Sacramento trade, the Sabonis for Halliburton, I've talked about this so many times, but I just remember how much Sacramento got crucified for that move, and it ultimately ended up being such a win-win. And then some of those other moves, bringing in Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter was a great addition. Even though he struggled in the playoffs a bit, he was still a great regular season player for them. So I think it was well-deserved. And the Kings, yeah, they dominated the ballots as they should have.
Well, another thing too with these Executive of the Year awards, it's a little politics in them. Do you really think that other GMs were going to vote for Danny Ainge to win this award?
Right.
Danny Ainge is a history of fleecing GMs. So
yeah, that's very true.
I knew kind of going into that. I'm like, I don't see them voting for him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And especially that he was the one that basically built this Lakers roster. And a lot of how a lot of teams feel about the Lakers too. So
for sure.
Yeah, I saw some hate being built into his campaign.
Yeah. That's definitely a good call.
All right. Well, look, moving on, Chance. So yesterday's games were interesting, to say the least. We got two games that basically ended up in blowouts or towards the end of the game, right? So the Heat Knicks game, Jimmy Butler returned, and Jimmy Butler showed out.
Surprise.
That Heat team, man, you really see why Eric Spoelstra is the coach that he is, man. Like that, no matter who they put on that court, they know their identity and they play it well. So like now, after we've seen the Heat go back and take this 2-1 lead at home, got another game in Miami. Chance, do you think the Knicks even have a chance in the rest of this series?
I definitely think they have a chance. I mean, they were a great team, full of up and downs all season long. And I feel like as I followed the Knicks throughout the season, they would go on like a 5-game losing streak. And just as quick as that would happen, all of a sudden they'd rattle off, 5 or 6 wins in a row. So this is a team that's very up and down. Ultimately, I picked the Heat to win the series, and I definitely feel even better about that after 3 games. I think it's definitely a coaching mismatch, which with Spo, most coaching matchups are mismatches when it comes to him. He's just completely another level. And Jimmy Butler, I don't think he's 100% yet, but as long as he is good enough to move up and down the court the way he was yesterday, they're just a tough team to beat. They're so deep, and there's an argument they could even be up 3-0. Game 2 was even close without Jimmy Butler. And if he were able to suit up and be 100% for that one, like I think would be basically advancing them to the final or the conference finals again. And it's insane what the Heat have done. They're now 2 wins away from going back to the conference finals for, what would this be, like the 4th year out of 5? They had the bubble year. They were in it last year. Or I guess 3rd out of 4 year. Like, it's just insane. Like, they just always sneak up and play well in the playoffs. And credit to Jimmy Butler, credit to Spo. I do think the Knicks do have a chance, but Julius Randle has to figure out what's going on because he just looked completely out of it. And Brunson, he's playing a little hobbled as well, but he hasn't really been able to get to his spots the way he was in the previous series as well. So ultimately, I do think the Heat wrap up this series, but the Knicks are a team. They get a couple guys going. Josh Hart has played okay so far. Quentin Grimes, if he can get going off the bench, like they've got the firehouse to be able to compete, but this next game is going to tell the whole story. Like if they can go back and get one in Miami, then they have home court back and it's anybody's series. But I've been just super impressed with what I've seen from Miami so far. What do you think? Do you think the Knicks can come back?
Man, I've been pulling for the Knicks through this.
You're a Brunson guy.
I am, man. But when I sit there and look at the duo of Brunson and Randall compared to the duo of Jimmy and Bam,
yep,
it's just it's no competing with that, man. And that's even with Brunson. Brunson has been playing phenomenal throughout these playoffs. Last night he started off a little sluggish and then kind of started hitting shots when it was a little too late.
Yeah, I feel like they kept making a run, but it was just a few minutes too late. They just never had enough time to get back into it.
Yeah, they were already too far gone. But like when you start looking at like Julius Randle, and then like his matchup with like Randle, he is such a fierce competitor. But the thing with him, man, like you visibly see him. Like I talked about Jaren, that does this too as well.
Yep.
Like you see him get so frustrated in the contact and all this, and he gets so stuck into that instead of moving on to the next play. And that is one of the most frustrating things when watching Julius Randle, because if he just had that next play, like his teammate, Jalen Brunson is one of the best in the league at having that next play mentality. Like miss a shot, go back down, hold defense, and let's come back and do it again. Right. Julius Randle gets so caught up into everything, then he starts looking for contact and blowing layups at the rim and just completely loses himself in the game. And that is truly one of those things I think that has not allowed him to ever reach that next level of which we may have expected him to reach coming out of college. Because Julius Randle, if you look at his assets as a player, he's able to, as a big, able to put the ball on the ground. He's able to guard multiple defenders when he wants to be engaged. His right hand has always been something that has been missing. He's very left dominated, but he always finds a way to get to the rim. So like he has all of those skills and all those assets to be a top 20 player in this league. But man, it's always been something that's holding him back. And I really think it's just his mentality sometimes because man, he gets so sucked up into these things. Like you saw him, when that whole scuffle happened in the game with Hartenstein and him, and I forgot which Heat players it was. It may have been Zeller out there, but you really see like there was moments that built up to all of that, right? Like and a lot of it came from the side of him just being frustrated.
Yeah, I think the Heat are just the more mature team. You know, they've been through the playoff burners, so many times now, whereas the Knicks, this is their first collective run together. And, that gets you by a team like Cleveland, who's also inexperienced. But when you go up a team like Miami, who has been through this, they know what it takes to win deep into the playoffs. I think that is a very underrated piece of this. And yeah, ultimately, I do think Miami ends up closing them out. And it's just insane the run that they've been able to be on. And Jimmy Butler, it's time to start putting his name further and further up that list, especially when it comes to playoff performances, because he has just been insane so far. And the deeper the series goes, the more time his ankle has to heal up. You never know where they could go from here.
Man, you never know. Then, another thing too, when I'm looking at that Knicks roster, Chance, how different would that Knicks team be if RJ Barrett was the RJ Barrett that they had expected when they drafted him?
Oh yeah.
Like if they had a true legit wing threat, man, this team would probably be the favorite in the East if they had a true dominant wing, and we still don't know if RJ Barrett will ever develop into that. But man, I could only imagine how Knicks fans feel about this team.
Yeah, I mean, when you take a guy third overall like that, you expect him to end up being a guy that's your first option that you can carry the team. And he has shown flashes throughout his career so far. He's shown flashes, but he's never just been able to put it together consistently. And he shot, 5 for 15, 5 for 16 in the game yesterday. He just hasn't been able to put together a consistent run. And yeah, I mean, you see that all the time. Like when you have a top 5 pick that doesn't turn into at least a, all-star level player, not, let alone a superstar, it just really holds you back. And yeah, they've done such a great job building the team. Julius Randle, with even with his flaws, he's been a great addition and a great fit for them. Brunson, obviously, we all know that he was just an amazing signing. And then some of their young guys, Quentin Grimes, I love Miles McBride. Like, they've got the roster, but you need a guy like RJ to take that next step. And until he does, if he doesn't, then I think the team will always have a limited ceiling for sure.
They will, because this team is built. He needs to be the guy. Brunson can be your 2, and then Randall could be your 3. But currently constructed as Brunson being your 1, you just don't have enough. You know,
yeah,
you just don't have enough, and that's it's unfortunate for them.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Now later on in the evening, Chance, we had a straight up ass whooping. With the with the Lakers and Warriors yesterday, man. Were you surprised by anything in that game, or you knew that was going to happen?
I won't sit here and say I knew they were going to win by 30. I did like the matchup for the Lakers just because their size down low. And you saw this in the last game. And I said before, if you can get 4 good Anthony Davis games, you win the series. They got a great game 1, just absolutely dominant performance. Game 2, it went back to that. There's, the checked out Anthony Davis. Like, that's just what happens for whatever reason. Every 2 or 3 games, he's just not there. Is what it is. Warriors win that one. Game 3, he's locked in again. I will say the first quarter, there's a big adjustment. So the whole first quarter, you notice that he's still playing drop coverage, and Clay got like 5 clean 3-point attempts, like just in the first quarter, because they're running those screens with Looney, with Draymond, and he's just dropping and just giving him that shot. And I don't know if this was an adjustment or if they planned to do this in the first quarter and then, let Anthony Davis rest up a little bit and then start going hard from there. But like halfway through the second quarter, I think it was 40-29. The Warriors are up by 11. And they start adjusting their coverage. Lakers go on like a 13-0 run, ends up being like a 30-8 run overall, and they just never look back from there. And one of the key differences is Anthony Davis started getting up on those screens. Another adjustment they made was taking Vanderbilt actually off of Curry, putting him on Draymond. So when they run the screen, Vanderbilt was able to switch on a Curry. So I think Ham has actually done a really great job with adjustments and with coaching decisions in this series so far, as far as like coverages on Curry. And then, once it got to the second half, it's just like, the Warriors just can't score in the paint. I mean, Anthony Davis, like the way he's playing on defense, and I know Jaren got Defensive Player of the Year, and that's my guy, and I love him, but I have not seen one player dominate on the defensive end like this in a really, really long time. I mean, it's not just around the rim. It's getting his hands on balls on the pick and roll. Like, he was just everywhere and battling through injuries too. Of course, he got kneed in the ribs. And so he was, grimacing on that. What Anthony Davis, he's always, battling through something. But if he's locked in like that, it's just really hard for the Lakers to lose. And so they've got 2 good Anthony Davis games. Can they get 2 more and close out the series? Because the Golden State Warriors are coming into game 4, backs against the wall, must-win game for them. Where do you see the series going from here?
Well, first thing is at the beginning of the game when they kept playing AD and drop, I never understood that decision to begin with, playing against the Warriors. Listeners out there, we love basketball education. So drop coverage is when the big man usually goes back when you're transitioning back on defense, and the big man focuses dropping back in coverage on defense towards the rim and protecting the rim. And defense is usually more designed for whenever you're playing against teams that you're expecting them to drive the basketball and attack the rim.
Basically what they did against the Grizzlies in the first round. Ja Morant's not a shooter. When there's a screen on Ja Morant, they are going to end up staying back and protecting the drive, as opposed to Curry, where you want to be up on the screen instead of dropping back, essentially.
Exactly. So the Warriors, if you look at the disparity, it's been all on ESPN when they're talking about it, the disparity between free throws and 3-point shots, how these are just 2 different teams. One team, the Lakers, are wanting to attack the rim and get most of their points in the paint. And then the Warriors, we know what they are. They're the Splash Brothers for a reason. They get most of their points from behind the perimeter. So therefore, I never understood that at first, but shout out to Ham. But, also in these playoffs series too, Chance, teams do want to give teams different looks just so they don't get comfortable. So I do understand that as well. But one thing, Chance, I give AD a lot of credit for that defense, but I text you about this the other day, man. Jared Vanderbilt, bro, let me tell you something, man. That is a steal.
Oh, yeah.
If you sit there and you watch him play on, I heard, I think it was Jeff Van Gundy on the broadcast the other day. They asked about Jared Vanderbilt. He wasn't hitting a lot of those open threes for a while, and Van Gundy was saying that, in the playoffs, he found it hard to play guys like that. And I'm like, well, I get that, Jeff, but that's why you haven't won a ring either. Because the truth is he is so valuable to that team. You have a 6'9", a 6'9" guy that's able to chase Steph Curry around the court. Mm-hmm. Man, that is life-changing for that team, because obviously LeBron is no longer at that point in his career to be able to do it. D'Angelo Russell cannot do it. Anthony Davis, obviously, you wouldn't ask him to do nothing like that.
Yeah, he's a different role within the defense.
So basically, between him and Austin Reeves, that's who you got to give those looks to. But having the versatility of Vanderbilt to be able to do that, I encourage anybody out there to just sit there and watch Vanderbilt play defense. Just focus in on him and look at all the different things that he does. Man, nobody else is moving around the court like that. That takes a whole different level of energy. That takes a whole different level of just want to get it done. And players, it's not a lot of players in the league or in college or overseas that are willing to work like that. And so someone like Jared Vanderbilt has been tremendous for their defense, for him to be able to switch off and guard guards and then also come back and help AD secure the paint. So I think he deserves a lot of credit too as well.
This is a guy that you can literally put him on Draymond, because if he gets matched up ISO against, their 4, their 5, he can handle that. But you also know that he can switch onto a point guard like Steph, who is one of the best 2 or 3 point guards of all time. Like, to have that versatility to be able to do both of those is, just incredibly impressive. And the 3 ball's not falling right now from the corner. He's getting good looks. The shots look good. I think, he'll start to knock a couple of those down as well and earn a little bit more respect. But he has been tremendous for them. And the whole team collectively is just playing amazing defense. And so for the Warriors, I'm kind of curious now. So they went with the JaMychal Green starting lineup. It worked in game 2. He hit a couple of his shots. He opened it up. But then in game 3, it just seemed like the Lakers continued to let him take that shot and he wasn't hitting those. Do you stick with that lineup, or do you go back to the traditional Draymond and Looney lineup for game 4? What do you do if you're Kerr?
Man, if I'm Kerr, I'm going back to that Draymond and Looney lineup, man. At the end of the day,
that's what I'm thinking.
That's the lineup that's got me here, right? So if I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna go out with what I know has worked. That JaMychal Green thing, it was a lineup that had to be done at the time for Looney and for the team, and he needed a spark and all for all the reasons of why it happened. It served its purpose. Let's go back to the bread and butter. And let's go get this work done, And so I think you got to do that. And then it's also another reason they give AD multiple looks, right? Like you don't want AD to get comfortable, because if AD is comfortable in this series, you lose. You lose this series with a comfortable Anthony Davis. You need to put him in positions where you're roughing him up, where you're challenging him, and you are exhausting him. So I think giving him different looks and different bodies is the way to go with that. So if I'm Kerr, I'm putting Looney back in.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I would do that. I'm curious to see what adjustments he makes. And Jordan Poole's been almost unplayable with his decision making and continuing to be a traffic cone on defense. So the Warriors, they had flaws all season, and especially on the road, they had a lot of flaws, and some of those flaws are starting to open up. At the end of the day, when you have Steph and Clay and Draymond, you're always going to have a chance. The series is not over by any means, but it'll be interesting to see what adjustments they come out with.
Don't you find it weird that Kuminga's not getting clocked?
Yeah, he had a stretch throughout the season when he looked like he was kind of turning the corner, but he still, gets lost on both ends at times. So it's interesting. Yeah, Moody has basically been really the more mature of the two so far, and getting more regular rotation minutes as opposed to Kuminga. But that could be a wrinkle that they throw out next game. I thought he looked okay in the garbage time that he played, so that could be another wrinkle. He got a lot of minutes in the playoffs last year in that Grizzlies series. I think he even started the game that Draymond was out. So he's got some potential, so that could be another wrinkle. Once you get to this middle of the playoff series, that's when it's time to start trying different cards and seeing what works. You see it with the Lakers. Lonnie Walker looked great in garbage time, so they end up playing him, and he looks amazing in game 3. He's making plays on both ends, so that could be another card that the Warriors play too, because you've just got to find that extra spark, because right now they just don't have that spark that's helping them, and they're they're really just struggling to score, particularly on the insides. That could be another, athlete that they get out there that can run in transition, help them get some easy buckets. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a move like that for sure.
Yeah, man, Warriors, another fun team, just like the Bucks, that I can't wait to talk about this offseason. Because people like, you paid all this money to Poole. Like, are you gonna try to get rid of his contract this offseason? You got Kuminga and Moody, two young guys who are just kind of sitting there where you haven't really unleashed them yet, right?
Right.
So like what do you look to move on from them? Draymond's big looming decision, and you got Clay wanting an extension. Whole bunch of stuff with them too. I'm super excited and looking forward to them in the offseason.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Chance, we talked about Jimmy Butler, how someone that we've got to talk about, raising him up in the rankings of all-time player lore. This Boston Philly situation, we've got James Harden, who is looked at as one of these all-time players. But in the playoffs, man, he gave us that great game one in this second round and dragged them to a win. But then as soon as Embiid comes back, he just has not looked like, I want to say he has not looked like himself, but in the playoffs, this is what he has done time and time again. So, Chance, what is the issue with James Harden and Philly?
I think, honestly, the issue is he's gotten older. He was never just a great primetime playoff performer in the past. And so, when we look at that first round series, even though they won every single game, we, talked about how James Harden did not necessarily look like himself. He's struggling to finish around the rim. And so we're like, if they're not getting that James Harden, their ceiling is definitely going to be limited. And Embiid can only take them so far. We have all these thoughts going into game one of the Boston series. And then, oh, wow, like all of a sudden James Harden throws up 45 points, hitting dagger threes, step back threes, looking like Houston Rockets Harden again. And ultimately, I think the issue is the real James Harden, especially at this age and where he is at in his career, the real James Harden is that Harden that we saw in games 2 and 3 and in that Brooklyn series. And we did have that outlier game 1, but once you get to the playoffs, games are every other night, games with this intensity, you're playing 35 to 40 minutes. A guy with his play style and his, the miles on his body, I think it's just unsustainable for him to keep playing at that level. Ideally, there would be some type of middle ground where you're not necessarily getting 45, but you're not shooting 4 for 24 either. So, ideally he could find some type of middle ground, but it just seems like he just doesn't have the energy anymore. And for whatever reason, the mentality thing, I don't know if he doesn't. Personally, he doesn't seem like the type of guy that would shy away from the moment. So it's just always been fascinating to me, how he has some of these just like god awful playoff games. But ultimately, I think a lot of it is physical. He's just not able to continue at that pace. He had to put in a lot of energy to carry them to that game 1 win. And now you see that he's, still trying to recover from that and hasn't looked himself since. Embiid has looked solid, but obviously he's still not 100%. He can only take them so far. They need their role players to step up. Guys like Melton, who had huge game ones, you need them to, get back to hitting shots, because ultimately the Celtics are just the deeper, more well-rounded team. When you've got Tatum in game 2, literally scoring like 7 points and they still win by 20 plus, like they're just a more well-rounded team. And so ultimately I picked the Sixers. This is the one that I feel definitely the least confident about, just because if you're not getting peak Embiid and at least somewhere in between Harden, which we haven't really gotten yet, then it's just really hard for them to win. So ultimately it looks like Boston is going to run away with this series unless Harden can turn the corner and, get back closer to that game 1 Harden.
Man, dude, I mean, I was sitting there looking at the box score yesterday of that game, and dude, it was brutal. Like, Harden 3 for 14, Maxey 4 for 16, Embiid 9 for 19, 30, 13, and 3. He had a great game. But then outside of that, Tobias Harris 3 for 6, 3 for 4 for PJ Tucker, and then Melton had a great game. But then outside of that, man, you really need Maxey and Harden to show up.
You can't have your backcourt shoot 7 for 30 and win the game, which is what they did.
You can't. Not the way this team's constructed.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, you look at Niang and Melton off the bench, like they gave solid production for what you expect out of them. But you can't have James Harden and Tyrese Maxey both playing 40 plus minutes and only going to hit a combined 7 shots. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, James Harden had 5 turnovers on top of that. That's not good. Not
James
good at
Harden
all.
and turnovers in the playoffs, like name a more iconic duo. It's every single season with that. It's just like his decision making for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is the offensive load that he carries. But yeah, I mean, he's got to be better. As you said, Maxi's got to be better. I do think Philly has enough talent where if they can put it all together, they can extend the series. But then even then, it's like once the series gets deeper, it favors the younger team, the Boston Celtics. I think, you kind of see this like with the Lakers where it's like these games are every other night. Can LeBron and AD hold up? Can Harden and Embiid's bodies hold up, going this late? Even guys like PJ Tucker that have been in the league for a while, like, and there's an interesting argument that they kind of had last night at the end of the broadcast where Stan Van Gundy was basically saying, like, I don't think it makes a difference if a guy plays 30 minutes or 40 minutes. Did you catch that where they're talking about like rest? And
Right.
I disagree with that. I think if you're able to put a team away and, rest up, not only, mentally taking that fourth quarter off, but I think Philly needs a game like that where they can put the gas on and not need Harden and Embiid to play 40 plus minutes to get a win. Like they need a game where they can just kind of relax a little bit and give their guys some rest, because ultimately the longer this series goes, the more that favors Boston as well. So it's looking good, but when you have the MVP on your team, you can never count them out. So we'll see what Embiid bounces back with.
Man, I remember I was in a Twitter spat in the middle of the year when my Mavs were struggling and people were coming after Luka Doncic saying that like man, we give way too much love to Luka, and look at him, but I mean he's basically he's James Harden, and all this stuff. But my clapback was, man, James Harden is an all-time player, and if you're ranking players, he's definitely above Luka Doncic on the list because he has accomplished more. But when you look at playoff performances, I'm picking Luka Doncic all day over James Harden in the playoffs.
Right. Oh yeah, 100%.
like, and so, man, that was one of the most frustrating Twitter spats I was ever in, just because I thought it was so ridiculous. But whatever. And it's, but it's nowadays we can't celebrate people without people always having to like, well, what about this guy? Or,
it's always a comparison.
Why can't everybody be great?
Right.
Why can't everybody be great? It's you can celebrate somebody without having to tear them down, tear down somebody else, man. It's totally. I love James Harden, but I also love Luka Doncic,
Yeah, and for Luka, he's a guy that, typically starts slow in the season and ramps up, and, by the playoffs, he's at his peak performance.
Right.
Whereas Harden, we've seen time and time again, him starting quick in the season and then just kind of slowly fading out. And I get it, we act like these guys, are not in good shape or whatever. Like, if you're playing even 20 minutes a night in an NBA game, like you're in tip-top shape. Like, it's just over time your body breaks down. I mean, for me, I just played in a men's league game last week and played 25 minutes and I can still barely walk. Like, and that's not NBA pace. That's just like men's league pace. Like it takes a lot on your body. Like all these guys are in good shape. It's just, he's older and his body is breaking down by the end of the series. And, I'm curious to see if he's able to find that juice one more time. Otherwise the series could be wrapping up quickly.
Man. And then speaking of crazy box scores, dude, that Suns Nuggets box score,
dude,
the Suns, I don't think the Suns have a chance in this series.
That's my takeaway too. That's my takeaway. When you need both guys to get 40 plus, or I guess Durant had like 39 because he missed the free throw at the end, but yeah. I mean, it seemed like it was like me and you turned on, the Xbox and we're playing my player and we're just like, me and you were just going to take all the shots, forget the other three. Like, that's what I felt like I was watching. And, talk about guys that step up in the playoffs. Devin Booker, that was one of the most incredibly efficient offensive performances I've ever seen. What was he?
Yeah, I think
20 for 25 to finish the game.
Yeah, I think him and Dirk are the only people that have a 40 ball off of like 80% from the field.
That was insane.
And so, like, this doesn't happen. Like, what I mean? Basically, like,
can't count on
like,
that.
And that was Dirk in the 2011 year when he was going in fuego.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, like, what Devin Booker did was, I can't stand Devin Booker. One thing, I'm not a hater.
Luka shirt. You're wearing a Luka shirt. You might be a little biased.
Yeah, I'm a little biased, but man, I'm gonna give props with his dude, man. Devin Booker is this playoffs. Devin Booker is doing everything he can, and like that goes to show you how I have said this about Devin Booker. Devin Booker's number one weakness was his inability to handle an offense through a double team.
Mm-hmm.
Him having Kevin Durant on that court with him takes away all of that.
Yep.
So now he's able to operate freely within the game and able to go out there and just give people buckets one-on-one because nobody can hold them one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
You double team or triple team, that's a different conversation.
Right.
but nobody can hold him
when you've got Durant out there. And so, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree. But I have the same mindset. If this is what it takes for you to win a game, it's just hard to feel good about that being sustainable to do 3 more times in a series against Denver. And so, yeah, if I'm Denver, I'm like, okay, we lost game 3 in Phoenix, first game in Phoenix this series. You literally need Durant and Booker to be completely in fuego, as you mentioned, just to, lose the game.
Mm-hmm.
I feel great if I'm Denver. I think you love the Jokic versus Ayton matchup. Ayton just, is not ready for that matchup. I think he's just too soft on the inside. So, and with Chris Paul out, it's just, it's literally just a 2-man game. And I just don't think that's sustainable over a long series. So I still feel great about Denver advancing. But at the end of the day, Durant's one of the best players, historically of all time. Devin Booker, when he's going and he's getting that single coverage, he can be one of the best scorers in the league. So, I mean, it's possible they are favored for, to win game 4 tonight. So how do you see tonight going? Do you think they're able to lift them up, just the 2 of them, and bring the series back 2-2?
I feel like they get another one. I thought they get another one at home.
They could win tonight and the series still, be shifted towards Denver, but I could see that too.
But I think Denver wraps this thing up in 6. I kind of think that's how this thing is gonna go. But and we'll see. But I just look at, man, DeAndre Ayton, has his minutes have been abysmal for the Suns, man. Whenever they got to put in Landale and Biyombo to come in this doggone game to give everything that you aren't giving, that is just embarrassing, man. That is embarrassing. You got 2 guys who are both of them, whether both of them undrafted, I'm not sure. If not, they definitely weren't taken third in the draft or whatever Ayton was taken at. Or no, he went number 1.
He was number 1. He was over Luka, over Trey.
That's right. Yeah, he went number 1. They definitely weren't taking number 1 in the NBA draft, man.
So Biyombo was the 7th overall pick, but it was in 2011, so 12 years ago. So he's kind of had some miles on his body at this point.
He went 7th. Who else was in that draft?
Let me see. I was just pulling it up because I did not realize
that draft must have been overall. Terrible.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Because he never, had a great career even as the 7th overall pick. So let me see. That was the Kyrie Irving draft. Kyrie went number 1 overall. Derek Williams, Enes Freedom.
Oh my God.
Previously known as Enes Kanter, Tristan Thompson, the Kardashian star, who got some minutes last night. Valanciunas, Jan Vesely, and then Biyombo. Yeah, that was a pretty mediocre. You had Kemba Walker went 9, Clay went 11, old Jimmer was in between them at 10, Kawhi. So yeah, that was had a little bit of star power, but yeah, Biyombo never really ultimately panned out for the 7th overall pick. And now in year 13 of his career, he should not be relied on to do things that your number 1 overall pick is failing to do, to your point.
If I'm Ayton, I should be embarrassed. I get it. If I don't want to be there, that's one thing. But I'm putting on a uniform. Like, I'm not going to go out here and just get punked like this. You know what I mean? Like it is embarrassing. Jokic had 30, 17, and 17. And I ended the game with 4 points and 9 boards.
Yeah.
No way I'm giving up 17 boards to another person I view myself as equal to. You know? So that's crazy to me, man.
Yeah, that's Phoenix is another team that'll be interesting, and not to look ahead because, when you've got Durant and Booker, you've got a chance, but they're another very interesting offseason use case where you've got your 2 stars, Chris Paul. I don't see Chris Paul coming back in the series. Even if it goes 7, I think that groin injury, I think he's pretty much done. And that's just yet another series where he is unable to make it through to the end of the playoffs. Ayton clearly just doesn't look like he's worth that contract. So what decisions do Phoenix make with their new owner? I'm curious to see how that offseason goes as well. It's definitely going to be an exciting summer, but for now, we'll tune in tonight and see if they can even it up. Regardless, I do think Denver takes this, and 6 games does sound right, I think, regardless.
Mm-mm-mm. Well, we got exciting lineups of basketball the next couple of days, Chance. Until next time, we'll holler at y'all. If you need something, hit us up, give us a comment, like. We need more engagement. So be sure to do all that stuff for us, please. Thank you. All right, y'all. Until next time, we'll holler at you. Peace.